All right. So the number one question in the market right now is, when is my property going to be worth more? I'm having so many conversations with sellers that want to sell, they want to move. Maybe they're sick of paying their mortgage because it costs $5,000 a month. They want to downsize, but they can't, because if they sell, they're going to lose a bunch of money. Well, they can sell, they just don't want to lose a bunch of money. So the number one question is, when is my property going to be worth more so I can get out of this thing, break even? So I'm going to be talking about that in today's video. I'm going to be going into the Fraser Valley, breaking down detached townhomes and condos and when they could be worth peak pricing again. Starting off with detached, which I actually have a very positive outlook for, as you guys know. And one of the main reasons is, if you look at the inventory is still historically pretty low in the detached market. It's about 3,500 listings on the market right now. And if we look at the Fraser Valley detached, there's 3,679 active listings in the detached market in total, 3 weeks into March right now. So inventory is still rising, and it typically rises to the spring, although it's not a meteoric rise like you see in condos or townhomes. And even if you go all the way back to 2008, we had 7,100 listings on the market in the Fraser Valley. That resulted in a 10% correction. And we also had way less people living here. Like if you look at the population back in 2008 in Canada, it was 33 million. Today it's 41 million. So we had about 20% less people living here, yet somehow still managed to get 7,100 listings for detached in the Fraser Valley. And there's a lot of reasons for why that is. One of them, which I've covered before, is every year we actually take detached homes out of the supply in the overall market, because we knock them down and replace them with condos and townhomes. And this is why I think there's always going to be a floor under detached homes, because like I said, every year there's more people living here and there's less detached homes to buy. So you have demand increasing and supply decreasing every single year. So if we look at the scenario that I drew up here, and again, I could be completely incorrect. This is all just theory. You're welcome to play with the numbers how you want. Some people say, no, it should go down 59% this year. But anyways, so I have currently right now, the peak is 1.765 million. That was the 2022 peak. And prices are trading a bit higher than this, but let's just say by end of year, they go down 3%. Now, just for reference, detached homes are basically flat over the last month. And if we go to the rolling 12 months, detached homes are actually up 1.4%. So I'm essentially saying that they're going to go down another, 4-ish% by end of year in 2025, which I think is pretty fair. Okay, so we have 2025, the end of the year, ending at 3%. Let's just say the market bottoms sometime in early 2026. And by the end of 2026, we're up 2%, very modest growth. 2027, maybe the market gets a little bit better, plus 3% in 2028. +5, and that would get you back to the peak at 1.735 million in 2030. Now, I actually think this is pretty conservative, because I could see prices rising faster than this for the detached market. But I think by 2030, that's 8 years to get from the 2022 peak back to peak pricing. And I don't think that would be too crazy, but again, I could be wrong. Because if we're already at pretty low levels of inventory as it is right now, and we're getting rid of more detached homes every year, and as interest rates drop and maybe some of that demand comes back, you could actually see prices rise faster than this. The historical average is about 7% every year. So I actually have the detached market growing less than the historical average every single year until 2030 to get back to peak pricing. Now on to townhomes. Inventory is above the historical average for townhomes, up at 1,316 listings currently. And if we look at the total amount of inventory on the market right now, we're only at 1,476. So it seems like the rate of growth for listings for inventory is actually starting to slow down. But again, it does typically rise until the fall. So it looks like we would eclipse the amount of inventory that we saw last year, this year, later on and into the summer and fall. So for townhomes, I think that you should see some decent growth, better than condos, but again, probably slower than detached homes. Now, what I like about townhomes is that they take up more land space than a detached. It's a lot harder to build more density for townhomes because they just take up more space, right? Like in the same amount of space that you would build, say 20 townhomes, you could probably build 300 condos or something like that, right? So there's still going to be a much more scarce asset than a condo. And to actually build a bunch of townhomes, you need way more space. So for that reason, I think they will be somewhat of a scarce asset going forward. And by end of 2025, let's say they go down 3%, just like detached. 2026, a +1% gain. 2027, +2. 28, +2, +3. And then in 2030, we get back to basically peak pricing of $928,000. So Both detached and townhomes I have hitting their peak prices in 2030. Now, something to note here is you'll notice, and I think this is very normal for the market, the gap in pricing between detached and townhomes will get wider into the future. As money gets cheaper, it becomes easier to afford more home. And that means people will be purchasing more expensive homes. And that means that, basically as it stands right now, the gap is about 500,000 between the two product types. But as we get into 2030, the gap would actually be about 800,000. And that is a normal thing. When money gets cheaper, the gap between detached and townhomes is wider. And as money gets more expensive, that gap will close. And this is why I've been saying for the longest time that it is an amazing time to upgrade. Even if you had the income and the means to upgrade, but you were losing money on whatever you're selling and you want to get into detached, I still think it's worth it to make that move now and get into the detached before that gap between the product types does start to widen. Now, this is the $1 million question here. What's going to happen with my condo, right? So again, it depends what you have and where you have it. Surrey Central might take longer than this because there's a lot of inventory in Surrey Central right now, but we are basically at all-time highs for condo inventory. And I do believe we're going to eclipse the amount of inventory we had last year and go even higher. Now, if we look at the amount of condos for sale in the Fraser Valley, 2362 time of recording. And last month we had 2195. So again, inventory is up almost 10% month over month. And the month of March is not over yet. And we are already higher than last year's high, which is in September, and inventory tends to rise until the summer or fall. So we should get far above where we were for the amount of inventory last year, which would put us at, way higher than we've ever been for condo inventory. Now, that being the case, I have condos taking a bit longer to get back to peak prices because we have to eat through all this inventory, which potentially could take years to do, right? So I have condos going down basically 5% from their price of about 540,000 right now by the end of 2025. We peaked out at 582. 2026, I have prices going down again because we're still going to have a lot of inventory. We have more pre-sales completing in 2026. So I have, prices going down again next year, but I also think more demand will come back into the market next year because prices will be lower, maybe interest rates are lower, and that will kind of soften the blow on condo prices. And as we get into 2027, a lot of this inventory will be absorbed. There won't be very much new inventory coming to market when it comes to pre-sale. So maybe we have some price growth that year, +3, +3, +3, +3. I just did like the bare bones amount of appreciation. Again, the average is 7%. And that's going to take till 2032 to get back to peak pricing. So basically, that would be the lost decade for condos in the Fraser Valley. It took 10 years to get from peak back to, where the prices were at that peak. And that would mean that you are trading flat for basically 10 years. Now, I actually do think there's a scenario where detached homes outperform even than what I've put on this chart here or this breakdown here, because again, there's not a lot of inventory. We don't know how low interest rates are going to go. And even if we go back and look at detached, it kind of does start to see, it seems like the steam of inventory is starting to run out. Like, I don't think inventory will probably go much higher than our peak last year. And then, maybe this is the highest that inventory will get before it slowly starts declining into 2026 and onward. So I think there's a scenario where detached homes actually perform better than what I have in this chart right now. But again, this is all theory. This is just a fun exercise to show you guys that, hey, if you're holding a townhome or holding a condo and you want to know, because these are the conversations that I'm having every single day with sellers, I don't foresee any massive price growth anytime soon. I think the earliest that we would see, prices parabolically rising to the upside like we did in 2016 and 2021 would probably be like 2028 if everything went absolutely perfect, right? But I think what's more likely is just, we bottom sometime in 2026 and then we have slow price growth out of that trough for the next 4 or 5 years. If you enjoyed this video, please do subscribe, like. If you want to chat with me about buying or selling in the Fraser Valley, I got a link down in the description. Otherwise, I'm that Agent Kelly and I'm making moves to move you. Peace.